The Forest of Whispers, Michael Rango's nightmare. It was midnight, and the moon was hidden behind dark clouds. Michael Rango decided to cross the old forest to shorten his path. The villagers had warned him many times, never cross this forest at night. But he didn't believe them. The ancient trees bent over him like black walls, blocking the sky. The hoot of owls and the rustling of leaves filled the air with dread. A cold wind blew, carrying the smell of damp soil. Suddenly, he heard footsteps behind him. He turned around, but no one was there. His pace quickened. With every step he took, the sound echoed as if someone else was following. His heart raced. In the darkness, a faint light appeared, like a lantern hanging between the dead branches. He walked closer. The lantern swayed in the wind, but no one was holding it. Just as he reached out to grab it, the light went out. Darkness swallowed the forest again. A whisper echoed through the trees. "Michael Rango, stay here." The voice sounded like his own, but distorted and broken. Shivers crawled down his spine. He ran, but the path was tangled with roots and branches. Suddenly, his foot caught on something, and he fell to the ground. When he stood up, he noticed his shoes were wet. He turned on his phone's flashlight and froze. Beneath his feet was a pit filled with blood. From the blood, pale faces slowly rose, their eyes white and lifeless. He stumbled back in terror. Behind him stood a man in torn clothes. The man had no face, only a hollow, black void. In a harsh, broken voice he said, "You should not have come here." Michael Rango ran like a madman. Branches tore at his skin, scratching his face. Suddenly, the lantern lit up again, this time right in front of him. He thought he had found safety, until he saw what the light revealed. Dozens of bodies hung from the trees, their lifeless forms swaying in the cold wind. But they weren't entirely dead. Their limbs twitched, their heads slowly lifted. One corpse raised its eyes to him and whispered, "Your place is here, too." Michael screamed. His phone slipped from his hand, and the light vanished. The forest sank into complete darkness. His frantic breathing echoed in the silence. Then, hundreds of whispers rose together, chanting his name, Michael Rango. It was as if the forest itself was alive. The trees stretched their branches like hands, reaching for him. One branch wrapped tightly around his leg. He struggled desperately, finally breaking free. And then, in a blink, he found himself outside the forest. Dawn had broken, but his clothes were soaked with dried blood. From that day on, no one ever saw Michael Rango the same way again. In 2019, a man rented an apartment in an old district in Japan. On his first night, while sitting on the couch working on his laptop, his phone rang. The number was unknown. When he answered, he heard nothing, just a long, heavy breath. He looked out the window and saw the shadow of a woman in a white dress walking through the alley, without her feet touching the ground. Terrified, he tried to ignore it. The next night, while working again, the lights suddenly went out, and a whisper echoed. "You can't see me, but I'm always watching you." The next morning, the landlord told him that a girl had fallen in the hallway of that building a few years ago and died, and since then, neighbors had reported strange noises. Heavy snow had covered our small town. My friend and I decided to drive to a remote village to take some photos. The roads were slippery and white, and cars moved cautiously. The air was cold and silent, even the birds were barely making a sound. When we reached halfway, Thick fog surrounded everything. Seeing the road became almost impossible. Suddenly, our car got stuck on a narrow side road. We tried to move, but the wheels just spun in the snow. My friend said, "Let's get out and try to find help." We grabbed our backpacks and stepped into the foggy path. Every step we took echoed strangely in the silence. After about half an hour of walking, suddenly something like a large shadow moved between the trees. My friend whispered, "Did you see that?" I turned around, but there was nothing, just trees and fog. Then, the sound of rustling leaves got closer, as if someone was following us. My heart started pounding, and my hands were frozen. We tried to move carefully, but the fog grew thicker and thicker. The path was disappearing. A strange sense of fear filled us, one we couldn't explain. Suddenly, we heard a faint scream from afar, like someone calling for help. Bravely, we headed toward the sound, but as we got closer, it vanished. Then we saw something I will never forget. A large white skull half buried in the snow. My friend said, "We have to go back." But we were lost. The fog was so dense that even our flashlight barely pierced it. We could hear footsteps behind us, yet whenever we turned, there was no one there. The air grew colder and darker, and we started running, but the snow was deep and every step was harder. Suddenly, we saw our car, but it was now surrounded by more trees than before. When we reached it, the door was open, though no one had touched it. We got inside and locked the doors, but we still felt something following us. After a few minutes, the car lights went out completely. A faint whisper sounded in our ears, "Why are you here?" My friend screamed, and we managed to start the car and sped away. When we reached town, we were out of breath and our hands were frozen. The next day, the local police went to the same road to check, but they found nothing. Yet we will never forget those sounds, shadows, and the skull in the snow. A few others later said that on snowy nights, cries and whispers come from the forest. To this day, no explanation exists for what we saw and heard. This experience made us promise never to travel alone or take remote roads during heavy snow. Every time it snows, my heart still races, and the image of that shadow and skull appears in my mind. Sometimes, I even feel like something is still watching me, just like it did that day in the forest. This happened for real, and I will never forget that terrifying snowy day for the rest of my life. Haunted Suspension Bridge. A true scary story. Kenzo and Tatsuya were two teenage friends who were obsessed with the paranormal. Every time they met, they would share creepy ghost stories or mysterious urban legends they had discovered. One evening, while browsing Japanese folklore online, Tatsuya came across a story about an old suspension bridge near his town. The bridge spanned a deep gorge, and according to the legend, it was cursed. Many people had reportedly jumped to their deaths there, and locals claimed that the spirits of those who died haunted the area. Tatsuya immediately thought of Kenzo and told him about it the next day. He described the rickety wooden planks, the ropes swaying in the wind, and the unnatural chill that always seemed to surround the bridge. Kenzo was intrigued but also excited and nervous. That very night, Kenzo decided he had to see the bridge for himself. He drove up into the mountains and reached the bridge just before midnight. The darkness was thick, and the air was cold and heavy. Every step on the creaking wooden planks made him tense. "This place, it's terrifying," Kenzo whispered, peering over the edge into the pitch-black gorge below. He imagined all the people who had leapt from the bridge, and shivers ran down his spine. He wanted to share the experience with Tatsuya, so he tried calling him on his cell phone, but there was no signal. Then Kenzo noticed an old phone booth nearby. He inserted a few coins and dialed his friend's number. Tatsuya, you won't believe where I am. I'm at the suspension bridge. The view is insane. You've got to come see it, Kenzo said, trying to sound casual. There was a pause. Then Tatsuya's voice came, tense and urgent. Wait, what number are you calling from? Kenzo laughed nervously. Oh, I couldn't get a signal, so I'm using this phone booth. Another pause. Tatsuya's voice grew urgent. Kenzo, there shouldn't be a phone booth there. I've seen every photo online. What do you mean? I'm standing right here, Kenzo replied, confused. Don't leave the booth. Stay exactly where you are. I'll be there in 30 minutes. Whatever you do, don't move. Kenzo's heart raced. He looked outside the booth and froze. A line of silent, shadowy figures seemed to be watching him. Their blank, staring faces sent chills down his spine. 30 minutes later, Tatsuya arrived at the bridge. He found Kenzo standing right at the edge of the gorge, phone pressed to his ear. But there was no phone booth, no line of people, nothing, only the eerie silence of the mountains and the faint sound of the wind through the trees. If Kenzo had stepped forward even a little, he would have fallen into the black depths below. Light bulb notes for making a YouTube video. Length: about 8 to 12 minutes if read slowly with pauses. Audio cues: creaky wind, rustling leaves, creaking wood, faint ghost whispers. Visual suggestions: slow pan shots of a dark bridge, shadowy fog, low light atmosphere. Delivery: emphasize suspense, pause before shocking moments, use whispering for extra effect.